this next little bit is all about kind of career growth and personal growth. I picked the title before I wrote any of the slides, but it's kind of true still. We've talked about the fact that your job doesn't end when your code simply works, but it may be hard to know where you go from there. And that was the problem those first few years that I worked at that other place. I had nothing to compare it to. I knew I wanted my code to be better, but I didn't have any idea where to even start until I had another person to kind of feed off of. So working alongside developers who do have more experience and who can provide some mentorship helps. But let's dig into some specific goals that you can set for yourself. Remember the scale of awesomeness from the first day? Or remember that there was such a thing? First, does it work? Does it meet the functional requirements? Does it work well? Is the user experience acceptable? Can it be made better? I think in the first presentation I said something like, can it be maintained or something like that? Can it be refactored? Who knows what refactoring is? Anybody know that word? Yeah, what is it?
It's like changing, basically, like you refactor a name, you change a name. So
it's change. It is changing code, specifically restructuring existing code without changing its behavior. So you change stuff, but nothing changes in the behavior. You are just sort of changing the structure, maybe renaming some variables or whatever. So in other words, refactoring improves non-functional attributes of the software. And according to the definition in the book where this was first, that word was kind of invented, you can't do that without tests. We haven't talked about testing at all in here. That's another thing you should learn, how to test code. But what this point on the scale kind of means is, can it be refactored? Have you written it in such a way that you could improve it? Or is it just too hard to sift through to even do that? Could it work elsewhere? So I interpret this a couple of different ways. One is that you make your code self-contained with as few dependencies as possible, so that if you found another problem that might have the same solution, you could drop in your existing code with minimal changes. Components sort of encourage this design. Here's another way I read this. The ability to create generalized solutions that solve more than just the specific problem at hand is incredibly valuable. And I'll give you an example, and this is sort of related to your question, John. So when Miles and I were working at that other place, there was a feature request to generate PDF reports from this web app. So I knew about a way on the command line to create PDFs from HTML pages. And I told Miles about it. And so we wrote the thing that fixed it for the app that we were making. But Miles took it a step further. He thought, well, gosh, this is pretty close to being a reusable library. So he put in the extra work, because it wasn't the last time we were going to need to turn something into a PDF. And of course, tons of Ruby developers need to turn HTML into PDFs. That's a really convenient thing. So we took the time to make that a reusable package. So like NPM packages. All the people who wrote the ones that we've been using probably had a specific problem to solve. Like whoever wrote React RTE probably needed a rich text editor in a specific project. But he didn't write it in such a way that it only worked in his project. He wrote it in a way that you could drop it in anywhere and push it up to GitHub. So Miles did that with this thing for generating PDFs, called it Wicked PDF, put it on GitHub, and now 3 million people have downloaded it. A couple of years in, he got tired of maintaining it and said, hey, Dave Jones, you want to take over Wicked PDF? Dave Jones was like, yeah, I'll take over Wicked PDF. I'm pretty sure you've probably written more code on it than Miles has at this point, probably, right? I don't know.
yeah, probably changed more.
He's probably changed more, right? But
It's an active project now. Almost 500,000 of those from like the last 6 months.
gosh dang. So yeah, the ability to create a generalized solution that solves more than just the specific problem at hand. It didn't just create PDFs in our one very specific thing out of this one report. We made it so that feed it any HTML, spits out PDF. Can anyone else understand it? Including future you, right? Can everyone else understand it? Will it work in a year? Will it work in 5 years? It's impossible to make your code completely future-proof, but you can do a lot to ensure that it keeps running. Make sure to specify the version numbers of your dependencies. So stuff doesn't happen like someone installs it and suddenly they get a different version of Rebase than you used and the whole thing breaks. If you specify the version number, that doesn't happen, right? Don't use deprecated APIs. If you know that, yes, this works right now, but we know for a fact that in the next version of React, they're going to take this thing away, just don't use it. Just get in the habit of not using that thing now. Because yes, it works now, but you want it to keep working. And someday there'll be a security patch or something that won't work with the old version, and you're going to have to change your stuff. So do it now. So anyway, the whole point of the scale is you can always be better, and just because your code works doesn't mean you're finished, and there's no more room for improvement. So anyway, what is a senior developer? Most people, including professionals, have surprisingly vague notions of what distinguishes a senior developer. And there's certainly more to it than simply having mad technical skills, which no one with mad technical skills wants to hear. So why should you care? I hope that it goes without saying that you're not there yet, and it's good to know what you're aiming for. So here's one way I've seen it broken down. Someone who's hiring a developer may want to ask these two questions, like to themselves. How much direction will this person need? And how much direction will they be able to provide to others, which is a little less obvious than the first. So let's dig a little deeper. There's a company called Frontside that made this thing they called the conjoined triangles of senior level development, which is a joke from Silicon Valley. But anyway, it's a really good exploration of what makes a strong developer. So they defined they defined seniority or mastery sort of as the intersection of how well a person works independently and leads. So the two things we just talked about, the ability to work independently and leads, how technically capable they are, and how well they connect and contribute to a larger community. So if you thought it was just how technically capable you are, I say it's not. You're not done growing. So let's break those down a little further. Let's explore them in more depth. How well a person works independently and leads. Leadership, in other words. How technically capable they are, technical capability, and how well they connect and contribute to a larger community. Community or connectedness. So here's the Venn diagram. At the center of this diagram is the mythical senior developer. That's Dave Jones. But each of these three tracks has a junior to senior path of its own. If this is beginning to sound like a lot of work, good, it is. So let's take a closer look at each of the three tracks. Technical capability, the most obvious one. A person with high technical capability is technically curious, tackles problems without giving up. Oh crap, I saw an error message, better shut my laptop. Right? And produces solutions that less experienced folks can use, maintain, and learn from. If you write some crazy wizard code that only a wizard can understand, you're really not doing anyone any favors. That's not how you win friends and influence people. Notice that knows every API under the sun without looking at documentation is not on the list here. So, any questions about technical capability or how to pronounce words? Okay, leadership, right? A person with leadership skills knows how to develop and follow a sense of purpose in themselves and others. They're willing to point out, own, and fix things that are broken about their work, their organization, and their own career tracks. The third trait, and perhaps the least obvious, connectedness or community. And a person with community skills has a sense of being part of a larger whole, a desire to contribute, and a sense that the other people, their coworkers, clients, users of their software, whoever, are not simply characters in his or her own movie, but fully realized individuals. And this can be really tough sometimes. Like when you do just want to interrupt someone when they ask you for help and or take their laptop away and do it for them. That's not helping somebody. Do you like it when people do that to you? Well, then don't do that to other people. It can be surprisingly hard sometimes. So that's community. And I'll be frank, very few people reach the senior level in all three categories. Very few people even want to. They're like, okay, community, that sounds great. I'll just be over here writing my wizard code. So at Fretless, we follow the same measure as Frontside, when it comes to senior developers. We say if someone has reached the senior level in technical capability and at least one of the other two traits and has reached at least the mid-level in the other one, we consider them a senior developer. And if you take nothing else from this talk, let it be this. Technical capability is not enough. It's not enough to qualify as senior in our world. No one with mad technical skills wants to hear that, but we can't deliver the kind of product we need to based on technical skills alone. We work with our employees to identify the areas in which they're interested in improving, and we try to provide an environment in which we hope they're able to do so. If I may use Seth as an example. When Seth started at Fretless, he'd already developed a pretty strong sense of leadership and community. But he was very new to programming. He had just been through a boot camp, but had clearly shown strengths. I mean, he was clearly a technical person who just hadn't been a programmer for very long. So, like, technically curious, oh my gosh, he was so freaking technically curious. He'd run into a thing he didn't know yet, and he would go, like, read the entire book that night, or whatever. Tackles problems without giving up, oh yeah. Produces solutions that less experienced folks can use, maintain, and learn from. I mean, yeah, he was kind of already doing that. He just didn't have much experience yet. So yeah, we were kind of blown away with where he was on the connectedness and leadership tracks. Even though he's brand new to programming, he was not a newbie. He had been a person, a grown-up for a while, and had developed some very strong skills in the other areas. And it's worth hearing how he got to that point before he came to us. So Seth is going to yap at you now. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Seth Bachman.